Hello from beautiful Las Vegas. So doesn't quite look like Las Vegas that you would know, because right now we're at a farm or an orchard. We're at Gilcrease Orchard. I'm Becky Hall. I'm Education Director at the Nevada Science Center. I'm here with Dr. Josh Bondi, Director of Research at the Nevada Science Center. And our special guest today who invited us to his farm is Mark from Gilcrease Orchard. He's going to be talking to you today about the farm here and a little bit about what's growing here. So I'll let Mark take it away, and then we'll stay around for lots of questions, lots of answers you can ask Mark. So Mark, I'll let you take it.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're glad you're joining with us. Here, this is our winter garden, we call this. This is plants we planted back in January. And so this is what you see. This is a pick your own farm. It was established as a pick your own farm back in 1977. So it's been around a long time. And we keep trying to grow different things, but you can come out here actually and pick your own produce. So you get to see where your food comes from. So that's part of the educational and entertainment part of it. So right now we have carrots, as you see right here. We have some beets over here. We have kale, we have spinach, arugula, radishes, and that's our main winter stuff. So it actually works really well right now. It's almost getting too hot because today's supposed to be like 90 degrees. I don't know where it is, how hot it is where you're at, but that's pretty hot for this kind of thing. So we, for example, if you came out here to pick carrots, you would you can see how big the carrot's going to be a lot of times before you pull it out of the ground. So you can look at the stem, see how big that stem is, and these two stems. And if it's separated by the other carrots, they'll be bigger. So let me just loosen that up and we'll pop these out. So those are pretty good sized carrots.
Ooh.
And so if they're bunched together too tightly, they'll be long and skinny, but they'll be not very fat. So it's better to have them spaced a little bit. Also, because we live in the desert here, we have irrigation tubing that runs to water the plants. We're watering right now. This is called a drip tape, and it has little holes every 8 inches. And so that waters the whole ground here. So we're blessed here with really good soil. We have a silty soil that we use that goes down several feet. Most places in Las Vegas, you just can't dig with just a shovel. You need to have a pick because it's just so hard. But because this was a wash, and every time it would rain for thousands of years, this would get more silt and more silt. And so it's really good prime farmland. One of the few places in town for that.
So Mark, where does the water come from? So how does all these crops get watered? Where does your water come from?
Okay, it comes from a well. So it was a spring at one time. It was a Thule spring. And we have a well that we share with some other people. So we pump it out of the ground and we water the plant with it.
So you were talking about earlier with us how different plants need different amounts of water. So what's the difference between like a crop like this versus your orchard where you have fruit trees?
Right. Well, these are annual crops. So an annual crop does its season in one growing season, and then it's done. And then but perennial crops, which come back year after year, like trees, those have deeper roots and more established roots, so they don't have to just grow up really fast and then die. They're around for a long time, so they can mine the water soil better. So that's why they get water twice a week in the summertime. The vegetables here get every day water.
So that's a lot of work trying to maintain all the trees and all the crops. So how many like volunteers or how many people work on the farm and orchard to make sure everything is growing right?
So there are 6 full-time people out here working in the fields, and then we have lots of support people with field trips and cashiers to check you out at the end of the day. But 6 people can do it.
Nice. So you were talking about earlier how a lot of people come to the farm, and of course we're interested in the crops, but everyone always says, where's your animals? So I hear some chickens over there. So you definitely have chickens, but you're not an animal farm, correct?
Correct. So yeah, we have chickens, and we do sell the eggs from the chickens. I can even
yeah,
show you. We have different types of chickens, and so that's the whole point, is we want to have a different colored eggs, because each chicken produces a different color of an egg. And so this is quite a variety here. So the chickens that we have here, we have about 50 chickens. We just have, they're more like show chickens. They're not really good producing chickens. Okay. They don't produce regularly. But
so we have the white ones.
Yeah.
This is almost like a blue one.
Right.
Do you know what kind of chicken that one comes from?
It's an Araucana.
Okay.
So an Americana, I guess, is another way to say it too. But we have. I'm not really a chicken expert, but we do have lots of other ones. There's Polish white chickens. We have the white leghorn.
And you can come to the farm and get the eggs too, right?
If you come early.
If you come early, you can get some eggs to take home too.
And so even if they're green on the outside, it's not like Dr. Seuss's green eggs and ham. They're actually the regular color on the inside.
All right, besides that, the chickens that you have on the farm, I know living in the Mojave Desert, we also have native animals. Can you share about some of the visitors that might come into the farm that live here naturally or natively?
Right, so we do have 2 sites here where we have burrowing owls. So the burrowing owls are actually very beneficial for us, because we're giving them all the credit for controlling a caterpillar that gets on the tomatoes. It's called a tomato hornworm, and the moths, so the adults of that caterpillar, fly at night, and so at night the bats and the owls are flying at night, and so they'll catch those, eat them, and so we really don't have to worry about those. At my house, I have to worry about it. Now I have 2 plants, and here we have hundreds of plants.
No, I've had them on my tomato plants before, and it's no fun. Besides kind of being a little creepy, they destroy your tomatoes.
Yeah, they'll eat the whole plant.
Right, cool. So everyone, you can come out to Gilcrease Farm to harvest, carrots. Talk about your fall, like what's in the fall that's usually the biggest hit?
So the biggest hit in the fall is our pumpkins. And then we have our apple cider donuts that we make from our apple cider. So, and our apple cider is the other draw. So we have Gala apples that we grow here, and they're ready in July. And so back when they first established the orchard before I was here, Ted Gilcrease decided, I need to do something about these apples because I have all these apples in July. Nobody wants apples in July. So he built a cider press. And so we press the apples here. And
it's definitely one of my favorite things when I come up here is to get the apple cider, especially on the hot days in October here in Las Vegas. It can still be in the 100 degrees and they keep it ice cold. So when you're coming out to visit and pick your pumpkins, you can get the ice cold apple cider. So you touched a little bit about, the past, but how long has Gilcrease Orchard been here in Las Vegas?
Well, so again, the mid-70s is when it became the orchard, but the Gilcreases themselves homesteaded this back in the 1920s.
Okay.
So 100 years ago, they were here, and they grew alfalfa here, and they lived by themselves because nobody else, they didn't have any neighbors.
Right.
And so they were out here all by themselves. They never married, had any kids, and so that's why before he died, Ted Gilcrease turned this into a foundation that would last beyond him.
Which is pretty amazing because not only virtually are we bringing you the farm, but students come up here on their field trips. You can come visit the farm with your families. So I'll leave that I know I've been asking Mark lots of questions, and I know everyone has their own questions for Mark. So I want to actually just open it up so we make sure that we touch base on everyone's curiosity about Gilcrease Orchards.
Absolutely. I know you guys have a jet probably flying over there as you're in the northwest part of the valley, but we have a question from Elisa in Italy. And Elisa, you should be able to unmute to ask your question.
Yes, thank you. I would like to know, is climate change affecting your work?
Does climate change affect your work?
Yes, it's making it more difficult to grow apples here because of the hot summers. The apples really don't appreciate the heat very much at all. So we're getting hotter each year in the summer, and the summer lasts longer into the fall than it used to too. And so that's one of our biggest problems is we don't have so much an insect problem here on our fruits and vegetables. It's sunburn because the intensity of the sun is so great. So we have a different set of issues than most growers do.
And we have a question from some students at Linda Gibbons Elementary here in Las Vegas. They wanted to know, how long do some crops take to grow? Like, what's the difference between carrots and pumpkins as far as time growth?
Well, those two I happen to know. So you can get pumpkins that are 120 day to mature pumpkins, or 90 day, or some of them are even 80 day to mature pumpkins. So because we're in the hot desert, if you get those shorter maturing ones, you have a better chance. Because if you plant in June with 120 day pumpkins, by the end of July, those pumpkins have gone through the summer and they're done. So if you can plant mid-July with a 90 day pumpkin, you'll have them for Halloween. So it's much better. And then, so a really quick crop is radishes. Those are 3 weeks from the time you seed it to the time you harvest.
Oh, wow.
A long crop, tomatoes are usually like 85 days. And so every crop's a little bit different, but carrots are 71 days. I just happen to know those because I just remember those. But there's other crops that are similar too. But like sunflowers are 80 days. Most things are like 75 to 80.
We have a few students, they want to know, do you guys sell any produce there? And if so, what is the cost of the produce there?
Okay, good question. So we have our fruit that's on the trees, because as you know, tomato is a fruit, right? But that's $1 a pound. So any tree fruit crop is $1.50 a pound. And that's like apriums, apricots, plums, pluots, pomegranates, apples, pears, and all that. And then if you want tomatoes, carrots, beets, that's all $1 a pound. Leafy greens would be $2 a pound.
And what is the visitorship there as far as like estimating numbers of visitors per year?
At least over the season, we have probably 100,000 people.
And can you tell for the viewers, at least the ones who live here in Southern Nevada, what is the visiting hours if they wanted to come visit the farms? And is there admission fees or anything like that?
Okay, good question. There is no admission fee. If you come Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays, we're open from 7 till 10 o'clock in the morning. And we have, so we are done by 10 o'clock because it usually gets too hot. By the time you go up to the front with your carrots, they're already wilted. So 10 o'clock works well. In the fall, we'll open longer, 7 to 2 when we get into the pumpkin season.
Some of the students who don't live here in Nevada, they just know that we're in the desert and they want to know, how do you deal with the dry heat and with planting so many plants behind you?
Okay, good question too. So the main thing is grow the things that you can grow in your area. For example, we have pomegranates that do really well. They're native to a desert region, so they do well. We're starting to phase out the apples more and more as it's getting hotter, just because they struggle so much as they don't want to be here. If they could talk, they'd say, I don't want to be here, change me somewhere else. But if you, timing is everything for everything else. So besides the trees, so carrots and all that kind of thing, if you just plant them early enough, and so by the time it gets really hot, they're done, that works well. If you plant sweet potatoes, for example, they can take the temperatures well up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit and still be okay. So if you just plant those in the summer and you want your garden to look great in the summer, and you live in Las Vegas in the heat, then sweet potatoes are a great option.
So I just gotta jump in here now. So if you're having a garden in Las Vegas or somewhere, you know, like desert climate like that, do plants or crops that grow underground, like carrots or potatoes or beets, do those do better than it versus other plants
Well,
because they're not exposed to the elements?
the reason they grow well here is because we don't get disease. Because of the dry climate, you don't get the fungal diseases. So a lot of times the potatoes that you get in your grocery stores, they have the early blight, late blight. They've got dozens of diseases for potato plants. We don't have those diseases. So if we plant again early enough, and then we just harvest them as new potatoes, get them out of the ground before it gets too hot, then they do fine. If we waited till they were really big potatoes, like you would in Idaho or other areas in the world, anything this big, they would start sprouting in the ground because it's so warm. And so that's why we get them out early.
If someone wanted to start a garden here in Las Vegas, their first garden, what would you consider maybe the first few things to try in your garden that you would be more successful at than something that a little bit more difficult to grow?
Well, if you're planting right now, I would plant sweet potatoes. They're beautiful, and the vines grow like crazy. So you can just chop up a piece of sweet potato, put it in the ground, and it will grow, as long as you have those eyes so that it can spring forth from that. But then okra is another one that likes the heat, so for the summer. And then if you did do pumpkins, squash is a little difficult here because we do have one bug that we have problems with. It's called squash bug, and that will destroy everything. So squash is a little more difficult to grow. Green beans you can grow easily here.
Do they do well in the summer?
Not in the summer, but in the spring and the fall. Okay. So you could plant them maybe back in April, and then they'll be ready by early June, and then you're done, and then you plant again in the fall. So a lot of times here, if you're planting fall, August is a really good time to plant for fall things. So you can plant almost your summer stuff in the fall. You can plant green beans, you can plant carrots, you can plant kale, all that again in August.
So do you turn over your crops then? Like here we have a spring crop, right? Do you change the type of crops that you're growing in the fall versus the spring, or do you kind of keep it the same, just replant it once it's harvested?
So right, we'll keep them separate. So the carrots, if you plant spring carrots, they're sweeter. If you plant them in the fall, the same ones, they won't be near as sweet. And so we can plant carrots in the fall, and we have in the past, but we probably won't this year. We'll just plant maybe sunflowers, or something like that they're easier to grow.
Yeah,
so,
Mark was saying something about he's trying to plant something special with sunflowers possibly later next year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll have to stay tuned for that. I'm excited for that. All right, Ralph, any more student questions?
We have quite a few student questions, but we'll try and get through a few more because we don't want to take up too much time. We have a question from Bailey, and she's right here in Nevada. Bailey, you should be able to unmute to ask your question.
Hi, my question is, what is your favorite part of taking care of the farm?
I really like pruning the trees in the wintertime. It's just kind of a zen thing where you're just by yourself and you're creating an artwork of with the tree. And so that's my favorite thing.
That's great advice. And we have a couple of more questions and then we'll let you go. But one of the students wants to know, if there's a drought, what is the best solution that you have to still fixing your crop, like not letting it completely die if there's a drought?
Well, it's kind of always a drought here. And so that's why we have this irrigation that we water every day to be conservative on the things you could grow, things that require less moisture. And if you covered some of your crop, that would help reduce the amount of water that would require as well.
That is great. And we have another student question. This is Zachary. He's right here in Southern Nevada as well. Zachary, you should be able to unmute. You had a pretty good question there, sir. Zach, can you hear us? All right, I think he's having some microphone issues, but Zachary wanted to know, what is the best way to harvest vast amounts of plants?
The best way, if you have vast amounts of plants, usually you'll get a mechanical harvester of some kind that'll come in. So if you were just growing one crop, which that's why we don't, is if you were growing like wheat, you'd get a combine that would come in and harvest that for you. Or if you're doing potatoes, you get a potato digger that comes in and digs up the potatoes and then puts them in a truck. So it's usually mechanical methods that are best if you're doing large quantities. But since we're doing just small quantities, shovel works just fine.
And Mark, if the kids want to go into agriculture, before we let you go, what kind of advice could you give to these kids if they want to go into agriculture or want to work on a farm in the communities that they live?
Yes, that's a good question. I'm not sure how to answer it, but just get involved as much as you can. So if you're too young to get a job there, try volunteering, see if they'll accept volunteers and see if you like it. And if you do, that's kind of how I got started in it. I started out just with a little garden that was like 1 acre garden as a probably an 8-year-old, and thought it was the best thing ever. So I spent all my summer days out there in that. And then I went to college and got a degree in horticulture. So I'm kind of doing my dream, right?
You certainly are. And before we let you go, where can the kids go if they want to learn more about Gilcrease Orchard?
You can go to the website. It's thegilcreaseorchard.org. And we have some things that'll tell you about the history. We tell you what's currently available and what our hours and our location is.
Absolutely. And Becky or Josh, can you guys tell our viewers who are new if they want to learn more about the Nevada Science Center, where can they go?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Mark for spending his morning with us. He is a busy guy. He has all this this farm to take care of. So thank you, Mark, for joining us today. So if you want to learn more about the Nevada Science Center or about more of our virtual field trips, we'll be exploring more of Nevada. You can visit us on our website at sciencecenternevada.org, or you can email us at info@nvscicenter.org.